Which brings us to pre-dynastic Egypt, and the culture that's been identified for this particular time frame is the Badarian. So it emerges around 6,500 years ago, and then starts to at least leave the archaeological record around 5,000 years ago. And you can see El Badari here, right along the Nile, and kind of, some people refer to this as Middle Egypt, other people refer to all of this area as Upper Egypt. So this was first excavated in the 1920s, so it's been looked at for quite a long time, but we do see a series of independent farming villages during this time frame. So the settlements themselves are clusters of skin tents or small huts. We find burials at this time frame, of course. Cemeteries emerging quite a bit earlier than this, but now we're starting to see both oval and rectangular pits with roofs of sticks and reed mats. There was a study done by a guy by the name of Joel Irish at the University of Alaska, and he found similarities from thousands of different places and times, thousands of people. And from this kind of population study, he was able to determine that there's a population continuity, so genetically speaking, everybody's related, and at least for a 5,000 period of time. So again, that's kind of interesting when you have a big enough burial population to be able to look at the genetics of it all. Except for the nobles, and actually in the nobles there are quite a bit of differences. This could be because of inbreeding, it could be because of marrying out into other noble families. It just depends. But it is kind of interesting that in the kind of general populace there's a population continuity. Now in the Badarian we do see some new technology emerge. We have some very nicely constructed projectile points here made out of flint. We see some nice pottery emerging. You can see this one here has actually got some nice punctation, so we're seeing some decoration start to appear on the pottery. This is often eggshell thin, which is fairly difficult to do by hand, and it's really super hard, almost as hard as metal. So we're talking about some nice sturdy pottery here. We also start to see woven flax, or I should say woven yarn. You can see it right here is a close-up of some yarn from that time period, and it is actually made of flax, and it was used to wrap shrouds around the dead. So again, we're seeing some changes in that burial cult emerge. We do see some metal artifacts that are present, but not necessarily tools themselves. All the tools are stone, but we do start to see copper pins, and we start to see beads. We see improvements in the weapons. Again, we have these nice projectile points that are polished. We also see bone harpoons emerge. So again, some new technology coming out. The Badarian burials become a little bit more elaborate. We're not seeing any intentional mummification, but we do start to see a pattern here where all of the burials are oriented west towards the setting sun. At El Badari itself, there were over 600 tombs, and again, these are sometimes roofed. They include different kinds of burial goods like jewelries, pottery. Again, here you can see kind of a plan here where the individual is flexed on their side wearing that little necklace with several pots here. We often find these reed mats included with them. Sometimes we'll find provisions in the form of cereals and other kinds of foods. We do find burials placed further away from the settlements, and we also find animal burials during this time frame. Sometimes we'll find individuals with their heads on a pillow, sometimes not, just depends. But because we are seeing differences in how the people are buried and what's included with the burials, we're starting to see again more evidence of social differentiation. But at this point in the Badarian, it's not huge, it's fairly minor. And these are traits, of course, that are burial traits that are going to be expanded during the dynastic period. During the Badarian, we start to see a general split of both the northern and the southern areas of the Nile. So again, the northern being Lower Egypt, the southern being Upper Egypt. And in the northern area, we see kind of a better lithic or stone tool industry emerge, and we see a lot of stone vessels. And in that Upper Egypt portion in the south, we see very high quality pottery emerge. So we're starting to see, again, with this craft specialization and improvements, some gradual emergence of state level characteristics. We see by the end of the Badarian very large communities in Upper Egypt, for instance, Hierakonpolis, which you can see right here in Upper Egypt, but also Koptos, Nakata, and Abydos. And you can see Abydos right here and Nakata right here. And I'm afraid the other site actually isn't on this map. We also see a lot of evidence of long-distance trade. So in Maadi, which is actually south of modern-day Cairo, in this red circle up here, we see stone tools and pottery from Palestine. In Buto, which is up here in this part of the delta, we see clay cones, and these are the same type of cones that were used for temple decoration in the Uruk period of Mesopotamia. We find pottery, again, from Palestine. We find wood from Palestine, shells from the Red Sea, ivory from sub-Saharan Africa, and copper and turquoise from the Sinai Peninsula. So lots of movement of goods and people during this time frame. But this brings us up to the pre-dynastic, well, we're still in pre-dynastic Egypt, but we're starting to get closer to the actual emergence of the state itself. And the best site to look at this just exactly pre-dynastic Egypt is Hierakonpolis. And again, you can see that here on this particular map. This city is known as the City of the Falcon. It's usually divided up into a couple different periods, but we're not really going to worry about that at this point in time. So here you can kind of see a plan map of Hierakonpolis. The wadis simply refers to dry creek beds or stream beds. You can see different kinds of tombs themselves. These are cemeteries, some tombs up in here, petroglyphs, and all sorts of kinds of things going on here. But here's a kind of interesting plan map of the site itself. It's actually pretty hard to do archaeology here because a lot of it is below the water table. So here's ground water all through here, and here's the surface water. So it's hard and difficult to do archaeology there. I mean, you can pump it out, which is what they're doing. There's active archaeology going on there, but that can still be dangerous with the water welling up and so forth. So lots of changes in culture going on. We're starting to see some kind of decorative pottery come up with some painting. We can see kind of dual colors here. So we're seeing increased craft specialization. We're seeing increased use of copper. We find it copper awls, copper axes, copper pins. So we do see evidence of increased warfare. So you can kind of see here these arrow shafts. We also have mace heads appear, which can be used as weapons, but they also start to, for lots of cultures, are used as signs of kings and so forth. But we are starting to see at this point a regional pottery emerge. So what that means is that we're seeing the same basic types of pottery being produced all around the area of Hierakonpolis. Now there are two basic, what are called ware types, or two types of pottery. We see utilitarian, and you can kind of look at this one right here. It doesn't have a lot of decorations, pretty plain. That's what we call utilitarian. Think of it as Corel ware, the stuff you use every day. And then we find fine ware. This would be like the china that we bring out for our holidays today. And these are what we find in burials. So again, we have the everyday use pottery and then the special use pottery. At Hierakonpolis itself, we see 15 kilns, so we see increased production of pottery during this time frame. But the fact that the same types of pottery are being produced, again, in this wider region, suggests that there's quite a bit of integration of the villages themselves. So lots of contact between the peoples.